Hey kids, Mr. Mac here with another art lesson, and today we're going to be making this colourful castle. So the artist we're looking at today is a Swiss artist called Paul Klee. He mostly made abstract paintings, and he liked to use lots of colour and experiment with the ways that he used colour. He did a really vibrant painting called Castle and Sun, which is what we're going to be inspired by today. And it just looks like a big castle made out of building blocks, colourful blocks of all different colours and shapes and sizes. So we're going to start off by just drawing the outlines of all the shapes to build up the overall structure of our castle. I'm using crayons for this, but you could easily use oil pastels to get the same effect with the watercolour paints at the end. You want it to sort of resist the water, so it leaves the border around the outside of the shapes. But the most important thing really is that it's nice and colourful, so just use whatever you have available. Felt tip pens, colour pencils, whatever, it'll be fine. So you can see all I'm doing here is I'm just layering up shapes, different angles, different sizes. I'm also using different colours. You don't have to change colour if you don't want to, I just thought it might look a bit more interesting. Think about what you know about castles, the little bits at the top, the crenellations where it goes in and out, the little squarey bits. Think about adding towers to it. You could add a little flag to it if you want to. It's completely up to you. Try and vary your shapes, so circles, squares, rectangles, triangles, hexagons, pentagons, whatever you like really. Just make sure you change the size of them, the way that you're stacking them together. You can sort of create these little repeating patterns like he did. And try and fill most of the space, but I've just left a bit of a gap around the outside for the background and also for the sun. So when that's done, we're going to colour it. And I'm giving you a couple of options for how you want to do this. I've shown you both of these before in previous videos, but on the left I've got my watercolour paints. If you've got access to watercolour paints, then that is probably the best method for this, because you get more water on the page. But there is also a way of doing this with felt tip pens, like I've shown you in a couple of videos before, so I'll go over that in a minute. So for the watercolour method, you are just making sure you've got plenty of water on your brush, that your paint that you're putting onto your brush is really well saturated, so that means that you've swooshed your brush around onto your little palette and got lots of colour onto your brush, and then you're just going to fill the sections in. I went with just one colour at a time, and I randomly sort of dotted the colour around so that that colour was separated by other colours as I went along. And you'll see as you do this, as long as you've got plenty of water on your brush, that the crayon or oil pastel will resist the edges of the water, so it will stop the colours from overlapping into the next section. It creates like a little barrier because it's greasy, it's waxy. It stops that water going over the edge, which is quite a nice little effect. If you're finding your colours are not as bright as you would hope for, you could either use a couple of things. You could either wait for them to dry and go back over them again. Sometimes watercolour paints are just not very saturated, they're not very bright. But more often than not, it just means you just need to smush your brush into those paints a little bit more on the palette. A few more times, make sure you've got plenty of water on your brush as well, and the more you sort of swirl it around, smush it, you'll pick up more paint, and then when you go to put that on the page, they'll be a little bit brighter. So on the right hand side, I'm going to show you the other method of doing it with felt tip pens. Very simple, colour them all in, exactly the same as on the other side, but with felt tip pens. Fairly neatly, but actually you don't have to be too neat with this method, because what we're then going to do is get just some clean water and dab it over the top, and you just sort of paint the section in with the clean water as if you were filling it in with watercolour, and it picks up all that ink from the pen that you put on the page, and it sort of starts blending it around and creating these nice watery effects just like you get with watercolours. Then I've just filled in the background and I've added a little sun with my watercolour paints, and that is about it. You can see as the water starts to do its thing, it's actually quite hard to tell the difference between the felt tip pen side and the watercolour paint side. So I'll leave it up to you how you do it. Think about the colours you're using, make sure they're nice and bright, bold, try not to mix them up too much. But most importantly, just have fun, experiment, and let me know how you get on. Stay safe, and I'll see you soon.